why America banned alcohol, and how it backfired spectacularly. The Prohibition era, spanning from 1920 to 1933, was one of the most dramatic and controversial chapters in American history. Fueled by moral crusades and temperance movements, the 18th Amendment outlawed the production, sale, and transportation of alcohol. But instead of creating a sober utopia, it unleashed a wave of crime, corruption, and unintended consequences. Dive into the story of how America's grand experiment with prohibition spiraled out of control, giving rise to organized crime and legendary figures like Al Capone. The roots of prohibition can be traced back to the early 19th century, when temperance movements began gaining traction. Groups like the Women's Christian Temperance Union, WCTU, and the Anti-Saloon League argued that alcohol was the root of societal evils, from domestic violence to poverty. By the early 20th century, their efforts had gained significant political clout, culminating in the passage of the 18th Amendment in 1919. Prohibition was officially enforced through the Volstead Act, which defined intoxicating liquors and outlined penalties for violations. While many Americans initially supported the ban, enforcement proved to be a nightmare. Bootleggers, speakeasies, and underground distilleries quickly emerged, turning ordinary citizens into criminals overnight. One of the most significant consequences of prohibition was the rise of organized crime. With alcohol now illegal, criminal syndicates saw an opportunity to profit. They smuggled liquor from Canada and the Caribbean, creating a booming black market. Cities like Chicago and New York became battlegrounds for rival gangs fighting over territory. Al Capone, the infamous Chicago mobster, became the face of Prohibition-era crime. His empire, built on bootlegging, gambling, and prostitution, earned him millions. Capone's ruthlessness and charisma made him a folk hero to some, but his violent tactics, including the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, shocked the nation. The government struggled to enforce prohibition as corruption infiltrated law enforcement and politics. Many officials were bribed to turn a blind eye to illegal activities. This widespread corruption undermined public trust and highlighted the futility of the ban. Prohibition also had unintended economic consequences. The closure of breweries and distilleries led to massive job losses, while the government lost billions in tax revenue. Meanwhile, the black market thrived, funneling money into the hands of criminals. Despite its failures, prohibition did have some positive effects. Alcohol consumption initially dropped, and public drunkenness declined. However, these gains were short-lived as people found ways to circumvent the law. The cultural impact of prohibition was profound. Jazz music flourished in speakeasies, and flappers became symbols of rebellion against traditional norms. The era also inspired countless books, movies, and songs, cementing its place in popular culture. By the late 1920s, public opinion had turned against prohibition. The Great Depression further highlighted the need for jobs and tax revenue, leading to calls for repeal. The 21st Amendment, ratified in 1933, officially ended prohibition, marking a rare instance of a constitutional amendment being overturned. The legacy of prohibition is a cautionary tale about the limits of government intervention in personal behavior. It showed that laws rooted in moral idealism often fail to account for human nature and can have unintended consequences. Organized crime, which had flourished during Prohibition, did not disappear after its repeal. Instead, gangs diversified into other illegal activities, such as drugs and gambling. The infrastructure built during Prohibition laid the groundwork for modern organized crime. Prohibition also had a lasting impact on American drinking habits. While alcohol consumption initially spiked after repeal, it eventually stabilized. Today, the era serves as a reminder of the dangers of extremism in policymaking. The temperance movement's influence can still be seen in modern debates over substance regulation. From tobacco to marijuana, the question of how much control the government should have over personal choices remains contentious. Prohibition also highlighted the power of grassroots movements. The temperance activists' ability to mobilize and influence policy serves as a model for modern advocacy groups. The media played a crucial role in shaping public perception of prohibition. Newspapers and radio broadcasts sensationalized the exploits of gangsters, turning them into larger-than-life figures. This media frenzy contributed to the glamorization of crime. Prohibition also had a significant impact on women's rights. Many temperance activists were also suffragists, and their success in passing the 18th Amendment demonstrated the growing political influence of women. The failure of prohibition led to a more pragmatic approach to alcohol regulation. Today, laws focus on moderation and harm reduction rather than outright bans. The story of prohibition is a testament to the complexity of human behavior and the challenges of social engineering. It serves as a reminder that well-intentioned policies can have far-reaching and unpredictable consequences. The Prohibition era is a fascinating chapter in American history, filled with lessons that resonate today. What can we learn from this failed experiment? Share your thoughts, explore more about this era, and join the conversation about the balance between personal freedom and societal good. Let's raise a glass, responsibly of course, to the past and its enduring lessons.